No?
No, it's crown.
Poison pill because. Huh?
Because you poisoned somebody last week.
It's crown jewel. It's crown jewel.
They're trying to increase the gearing level of the company in order for it not to be attractive to SGF.
But what are they doing? They are actually giving. They want to dispose that 20 million.
Of their assets.
They want to dispose $20 million because they are suspecting that if they remove that 20 million from their books, if they dispose, if that 20 million is not available, that it might reduce the interest of, it might mitigate the interest that this other company has in acquiring, that's SGF. So that is more of a crown jewel, right?
Yeah.
That's more crown jewel than any other thing. So those are the small things we will need to identify. Once we get that that's crown jewel, then we'll be able to write something about it. Okay. So our question says, evaluate whether the acquisition of Foda Co. will be beneficial to Pursuit Co. and its shareholders. And it says the free cash flow to firm, not free cash flow to equity. So if we are calculating free cash flow to firm, remember the last question we did, the Avemco was free cash flow to equity. Now we are doing free cash flow to firm. So we are having value of equity and value of debt together, right? So we're going to be using WACC as our discount rate in our free cash flows, unlike where we used our cost of equity in the other question as our free cash flow. These are the small factors that will be in a question that distinguish one question from another question, and that makes someone that is properly prepared for the exam to be able to sift through a lot of information and be able to effectively do some basic things so that you're able to get easy marks and move on. If you're stranded, assume figures and just move on. Just show the marker that you've assumed the figure so that the marker doesn't waste time looking for where you got the figure from. End of story. So a lot of means of, if you get stranded, assume a figure and move on with your life. And I'll show you some things practically as we continue. First of all, I want to get close to perfection before I now start taking things for granted, because some of these things will not be practicable to do under the short amount of time that is your exam time. Okay, so we should assume that the combined company, so we'll see that when we are calculating, we'll get to a point where we need that assumption that the combined company's capital structure stays the same with Pursuit Co's current capital structure, and then we'll use that to work. So we can set up now. So we start our question, and they said we should prepare a report to the board of directors as usual. Yeah. So we start. To they didn't tell you should assume that you're somebody, Abi. Please unmute your mic and talk, except you have noise in your background. So to who?
Board of directors.
And who are you?
The consultant.
So they don't tell you anything, so we'll assume that you're a console. Subject, Tama, are you here? So what's the subject now? And this is the one that you said one day we should allow you to do. So please do. What's the subject? That day has come. If you particularly, what's your subject? Why is nobody saying anything now? A subject
Okay,
that we
just
feel,
like he said, acquisition of Fodaco and defense to SGF takeover.
you know, there are other things that we are doing here apart from that.
The valuations inside the acquisition, you have those valuations now.
No, but there are other things that the requirement said we should do,
About environmental reporting and all that.
and the rest of it. Okay, the environmental reporting was, remember that your report ended somewhere. Your report ended in part
Okay.
1. So that environmental reporting is not part of your report, so it's not important. But there are things where they ask you for the amount of debt finance needed. That's still acquisition. Explains the implication of change in capital structure. That's still acquisition. SGF goes pursuit. Okay, so that's SGF goes pursuit. So that's something entirely different. And that was also, it's all about acquisition of Fodaco and SGF. Okay, so this will be a great subject to use now. Acquisition of Fodaco and the SGF issue. That should work. And then your date will, as usual, be the 10th of July, 2020. Continue praying that the day should not come. Doesn't matter. So now appendix 1. So we have our appendix 1.
Hello?
Hello? So now we've set up our appendix 1. Then we can also have, so appendix 1 first of all. Our appendix 1 will be what? From what we have as our requirements, what will be our appendix 1? So we have valuation of Fodaco as our first appendix. Then, like I said, this will take us a lot of, so if you are paper-based, if I were you, I'll leave at least 2 or 3 pages for that, and the marks will guide your thoughts. So I'll leave 3 pages if I were in the exam for this, for the valuation, for the appendix for the valuation of Fodaco. So Lillian, are you here?
You leave 3 pages for just this question, for just this first question.
I've not started, it's not the question, no, just the valuation of Fodaco. Just the valuation of Fodaco. Then I'll go to, then I can leave 1 page or 2 pages for the valuation of, so appendix 2 now. So I'll do them as 2 different appendices. So appendix 2 will be the valuation of the combined company. But if you want to do the valuation of the combined company and the valuation of Fodaco as 1 appendix, that's fine. But then me, I'll leave at least 4 pages for that. Okay, then I'll have, depending on what's, as the question progresses, I would have maybe my appendix 3. So I'll open an appendix 3. I know they said I should do something else. I can't remember exactly what they said. So I'll open my appendix 3. Hopefully that should enter 1 appendix. So since I'm in class, I can afford to cheat. So I don't bother about very much. I can open my appendix 3. I would expect, I think I have appendix 3 and appendix 4. So I'll just leave like 3 pages for appendix 3 so that in case I have an appendix 4, I'll put that. Then I can come and start my report. So my introduction. Ify,
Yes, I'm here.
You are not here since, so we've been looking for you. So if you run away and think that we will not know, we know.
Sorry, oh.
We have looked for you tired today. The parts that you said we should tell you the day that it happens. You said you wanted to do heading and introduction. We're looking for you. We didn't see you. Okay, so what will be our introduction now? So let's do a smart introduction. We didn't do yesterday. We didn't do in the last question. So let's do this one now. What will be our introduction? So say this report evaluates the proposed acquisition of Fodaco using the free cash flow to firm model. So remember, they ask you for assumptions. So assumptions will be part of your gist. So I've said 2 or 3 paragraphs. 2 paragraphs are in 1 or 2 paragraphs, 2 or 3 sentences. So it also the report also looks at other issues, including so there's no need. The question requirement A2 was about limitation. Limitation is part of valuation, so it's not important to do that. It's not important to put limitation separately. If you do that, that's fine, but it doesn't want, like I said, I want to make this introduction as brief as possible, remembering that all you're giving, all that introduction is doing for you is format. It's not giving you marks, so don't waste too much time on it. So the report also looks at other issues, including an estimation of the amount of debt finance needed. So instead of that, I can say including current capital or capital structure issues, that capital structure issues has taken care of my 2, that's 3 and 4 now. And a defense against the potential takeover bid by SGF. Full stop. And that would be a proper. Are you here?
Yes.
Lillian, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, and that would make sense for our introduction. Brief, concise, basically gives someone an idea of what you want to talk about. Has not taken you too much time to do. Okay, so after the introduction, we go to the body of our report. So we can put the heading of our body of this part now will be acquisition of Fodaco and the combined company. And what I always say is all your marks, substantially all your marks in this question will be your computation. So what you need to write in this place, and that's why I ignored it yesterday, and many a time I ignore it a lot, is once you can put 2 sentences, 3 sentences together in this part, you're fine. You don't need to waste time on it. There's is the valuation viable? Does it, or is the valuation beneficial? How much did they spend? How much would they spend? Or sorry, how much is the value? Is there some kind of benefit? Is the combined company's value higher than the value of the individual companies? That's basically what you're saying. And then you can go to your limitations next. So after that, after that heading, then I can, so I don't want to have more than a few paragraphs for that. Appreciating that I can cheat in this place, but I don't want that to be more than 1 page. I'll still leave 1 page for it. Even if that 1 page is 3 lines, it's still 1 page. I'll still leave it. I don't want to hear story. Then limitations of the valuations or of free cash flow to firm model. Then amount of debt finance needed. That one will still be a calculation. Will still be in my appendix, the computation. So all I'm coming here is the story. So limitations, how many marks they give for limitations?
4 marks.
So 4 marks. So I expect like 4 points. So in paper based, I'll still leave 1 page for it too. That way your work is easy. Halima, do you understand what I'm saying? Halima?
Yes.
So I'm not wasting paper as much as I'm giving myself flexibility. I'm also making the marker to enjoy marking my script, because I'm not trying to force things into small bits of paper, because that thing will stress you. It will also, you will be writing and be afraid that you will soon exhaust that paper. So the first valuation for any question, at least 3 pages. The second valuation, 2 pages. The introduction, 1 page. Next page, whatever like in this case now, acquisition of Okwuogu and the combined company, 1 page. Even if I write only 3 or 4 lines, it's fine. Limitation, 1 page. That way I'm giving you, immediately you see my heading, you know that that's what is there. Give me the marks that are, and then everything is paragraphed. So the next part is the amount of additional finance needed. And then finally, we go to our defense.
Mr. Brian.
Yes?
Hello, Mr. Brian. So,
yes.
That third one that you wrote, amount of additional finance needed.
Yes.
That question, it has 2 parts. It has amounts needed and conclude whether the capital structure will be maintained.
So but it will still be, no, it will still be, I will still discuss, I'll just discuss that and as a second paragraph, but it will still be the same.
Because if you just put this, only this topic there,
yes.
While you're writing, forget that second part of the question.
So that's now for the person to remember. But if you put it as a heading, then it makes the heading very. Are you saying we should put it as a heading?
I'm just saying, is there no way so you'll be able to remember? Because if you just write amounts needed, you might forget that.
But you must conclude now. You must conclude, and that conclusion will still come potentially under your final conclusion. So, and concludes on whether pursuit goes current capital structure. There's no way you're answering this question, and it's 3 marks. So it's not something that you will do separately. See, mark allocation too will guide some of the things you're thinking. If you have calculated this thing and written something that is more than 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, then you're making, either you don't understand the question clearly or something is very wrong. A 3-mark question will show you that it's a simple thing to do. If it starts getting complicated in your mind, then something is wrong. It's not going to be very difficult. So it will be hard for you not to conclude the way the mark allocation is set. But I agree with you on, especially with paper-based, this will be easy. Just underline that thing when you're reading the requirement so that you won't forget it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so I will come back and say amount of additional finance needed and conclusion. That conclusion now, I hope it doesn't sound like the conclusion we'll have at the end.
If you remember, you can remove it. I'm just saying so that you don't.
Yeah, I'll forget in this question now. I'm not under any pressure. I don't need these parts. I don't even want to answer them. What I want to do is the valuation. The rest of it, I think you can answer them. If you get the stories I'm telling. Okay, so and if current capital structure can be maintained. This your heading now is now 3 marks now. I should give you 3 marks for just writing this kind of long story in your heading. So defense against the SGF bid. And finally, conclusion. If you do not have a conclusion in a report, you've missed the plot. Okay, so we're done. We have set up. That's taking us an hour. We'll finally set up. So we're good to go. So with this now, at least my structure format of reports I've set up in a way that it will be unlikely that I shouldn't be able to fill in the blanks enough to at least get my professional marks, no matter how badly it goes from there. Okay, so how do we start this now? We have all these years, they've given us sales revenue. What did they tell us about revenue growth?
Hello, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Please, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why is the appendix coming at the beginning of the report, not after the report?
It's harder to do it after the report. I said that.
And they will give you
full marks. This is model answer now. This is a model answer.
Okay.
So I've said that.
Thank you.
The examiner and the marking team are conscious that in under exam conditions, it is very, very hard for you to be able to structure the amount of writing that you will need and then put an appendix at the end. But you will see that even in the answers in the books and maybe the examiner answer, the appendix will be at the end. But I've been privy to a lot of discussions where the examining team have said, if you answer your question like this, put in the appendix. Appendix is appended to your report, so it is not part of your report. So you can staple your appendix in front of your report or at the back of your report. Standard procedure is to staple it at the back, but if you staple it in front, it's still acceptable. So what we are doing now is stapling our appendix in front because it is easier. This thing is, it is the computations you do that will give you the discussion. So if you want to do the discussion first, there's nothing to discuss until you compute. So it's harder for you to be able to structure it like that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, I do.
Yeah. So that's why we just we'll do this. Okay, so we look through our question now. They said POSITCO has market value of equity, market debt to equity ratio of 50, equity beta 1.18. POSITCO has total firm value of 140. Okay, and then FODACO now, they're giving us statement of profit or loss. They say FODACO has market debt to equity ratio 1090 and an estimated equity beta of 1.53. It can be assumed that tax allowable depreciation is equivalent to the, so that means we'll add tax allowable depreciation and subtract amount of investment needed. So two of them cancel each other. There's no need to deal with that tax allowable depreciation. That's basically what they're telling us. So the tax allowable depreciation should have been added back to your free cash flows, while the amount of investment should have been subtracted. Since they are equal to each other, then it doesn't mean anything. You can ignore that point completely. And then, however, so you can use that as an assumption, Lillian. If you're looking for assumptions and you run out of assumption, one assumption is that we have assumed, like the question says, that the tax allowable depreciation is equal to the amount of additional investment needed. That is a proper assumption. I don't like it because there are other more valid ones, but that's an assumption and they will give you the mark for it. And for that, we need an additional investment in assets of 22 cents per dollar in increase in revenue for the next 4 years. It's anticipated that FODACO will pay interest of 9% on its future borrowings. One of the challenges with questions, particularly valuation questions, is where do you start the question from? So you continue looking until something clicks. Now it says, for the next 4 years, I think that's where the question starts from. For the next 4 years, FODACO's sales revenue will grow at the same average rate as the previous 4 years. So I can do that. So that will be my starting point. So I'll find the 4-year sales growth. What I can do, if I want to make this a little neater, is maybe to do, oh God, I didn't leave enough space. Why did I leave such a small space? Wow, that's very, very strange. I leave so small a space when I was talking about it. Okay, so when I get there, I will shift it. Luckily for me, I'm not in the exam. Okay, so I will do my working here. So I'll call my growth working my working one, while I put my, so I'll have my valuation project. So I'll have year. Also for valuation, you don't need year 0. So I just have year 1. I know that this one will shift significantly. So I have my year 1. I'll have my year 2. Year 3. Year 4. And then maybe space. And then I can have my workings here.